Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the damn sofa. That's the damn sofa back there, and my usual sassy sidekick's gone, so the teddy bear is going to be our sidekick for this little episode here, and my damn name's Paul. Now today we are going to be discussing a case. If you have followed my channel, if you know me, this is probably considered my all-time, and I hate to say favorite case, but the case that fascinates me the most, and it is mostly known by the name of the staircase, right? And this was made famous by originally a documentary called The Staircase. And so recently HBO has done a true crime series, if you will, a short series, what I call a fictionalized version of it, the retelling of the documentary. And what I'm going to do in this series for my videos is we're going to go episode by episode. I've made notes on my phone and we're just going to talk about some key points of what stuck out to me in each episode. Okay, so that being said, very quickly, we're going to just hit on some key points about some backstory here. Now, I will say this, these videos in this series that I'm doing, they're not really geared towards explaining all the backstory of it. If you want me to do a video, like an overall of kind of like a deep dive back into this case, like where's everything now? I actually thought about driving by the house again. I do live in the area where this took place. It sold semi-recently. And I thought about driving by the house just to see if any outdoor changes have been made, that kind of a thing. Seeing like what the neighborhood looks like now, that type situation. Anyways, but if you want me to do like more of like an overall deep dive thing, let me know in the comment section. But this is not going to be like that kind of a thing. These videos here are going to be more or less intended for people who are kind of familiar with it, that type of situation, and for people who want to discuss each episode. So that being said, there are kind of spoiler alerts, if you will. Again, this is a real life case with real life people, so you know, it's hard to say spoiler alert because mostly you know what's going to happen, right? Anyways, so what we're going to do is very quickly we're going to talk about the actual people behind it. So I'm just going to read this. Now this is from Wikipedia. Again, just because I know this case, I usually don't use Wikipedia as a resource, but this quick one-liner here sums up everything and it's very quick. So Michael Peterson, that is who this centers around. He is the alleged perpetrator. This was Kathleen Peterson. She is the victim. This was her husband. He is an American novelist. He was an American novelist. He was convicted in 2003 of taking the life of Kathleen Peterson. She was found at the bottom of the stairs in 2001. After 8 years, he was granted a new trial. This was due to a judge ruled a critical prosecution witness gave misleading testimony. This was Dwayne. I will give my personal opinions on that kind of stuff at the end of this video. In 2017, Michael Peterson submitted an Alford plea to reduce charge of manslaughter. He was sentenced to time already served and freed. He is a free man. He lives here in Durham, North Carolina, an apartment complex. And people who were on the jury still see him around town at the gym, that kind of a thing. He is, out and amongst us. So that is the nuts and bolts of that. Now, HBO, like I said, has done this series on it, and very quickly we're just going to talk about some of the cast. So Colin Firth plays Michael Peterson, and Toni Collette plays Kathleen Peterson. Okay, so obviously I didn't know any of these people in real life, right? I didn't, especially Kathleen, I have no idea other than some of the home video footage we saw. Michael Peterson, I didn't know, but we saw obviously lots of footage of him from the documentary, from court, that kind of stuff. I will say that the acting in this HBO special, miniseries, whatever you want to call it, to me is excellent. Not only have they found actors and actresses that really accurately portray the people that they play in real life, but they have really picked up on a lot of like the nuances of the characters and whatnot, right? So I really feel like Colin picks up on a lot of these like behaviors that we see with Michael Peterson. I'm guessing maybe Toni Collette does this with Kathleen. I'm not sure. As far as the children go, as far as like Margaret, the adopted girls, Margaret, let's see, they're Caitlin, her actual biological daughter, Martha Ratliff. They look like the character. They look like the real life people. I think the guys playing the sons look like the actual sons. Parker Posey, she plays Frida Black. This was one of the attorneys. I love Parker Posey and pretty much anything she does, and she's excellent as Frida Black. Frida Black was an interesting character to watch, even though I disagree with a lot of the stuff that went on as far as the state prosecutors went in this case. We'll talk about my opinions on that. So there's that. Visually, I think this is an amazing production. I mean, I am hooked on it, right? So all of the makings are there for an excellent show, an excellent binger. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my phone, and I have literally, here's my phone, I have literally just made notes as I was watching this, and I was like, as I was going, and I'll probably end up having to watch it again just because I was literally just sitting there making notes on the whole thing. And so I'm just going to go down and read the notes that I made, and we're going to talk about them here in this video. Okay, so one thing for me that this did, and again, this is episode 1, is what this did is it brought to life a lot of the things that we didn't see happen, but we heard about. Because, again, remember, Michael Peterson opened up this case to a documentary crew, right? And as we'll learn, he ends up dating someone on it. I mean, you get this all access to this high profile case, right? That's like unprecedented at the time. And that's one of the fascinations of it. And then on top of it, Michael Peterson's like character, his behavior was just, I mean, it made for good TV, right? I mean, he's kind of a bizarre person, right? Like, who opens up their life in this moment? It was kind of strange, and he's just kind of a strange dude. Anyways, so that being said, one of the things that always in my mind has haunted me was that evening. And so watching this play out in the beginning scenes, I was like, mesmerized. So one of the first notes that I wrote was, opening scenes are Todd and the girl coming home to a cops and an ambulance at the house. Todd is drunk. He comes in, he sees Kathleen. She's at the bottom of the stairs. Michael Peterson is completely freaked out. Now, this is a horrifying scene, right? Now, we've seen, if you follow this, if you've watched the case, you've seen the crime scene photos. This show, I mean, literally, it was identical, right? I mean, it was that gruesome. That was one of the things that all these red flags went off, is this is somebody who fell down the stairs, and it looks like Chainsaw Massacre took place in here. So imagine coming home, you're drunk from a Christmas party, and you're coming into your stepmother at the bottom of the stairs, covered in blood. Covered, right? I mean, this is, what? Your dad is completely freaking out, inconsolable, and literally speechless. So that part was very interesting to me. Also, what was interesting to me is it just made it more real, and even for me, like, just sobering to watch. Like, it gave me goosebumps of how close they were in proximity to everything, how he walked past the body, how Michael Peterson was sitting right there, all that. So let's keep going. Okay, when Todd tells his dad that she's dead, meaning Kathleen, and Michael Peterson jumps up and hugs onto Kathleen's body, it's morbid. And so a lot of this stuff, I'm like, did that really happen? Because this is what went through my mind. And before I get into that, I will say this. We're going to talk, as for each of these installments go, as to my thoughts and whatnot on what I think about it. Again, I have followed this case for years, so I already come into this with my preconceived thoughts and biases on what I think and yada, 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 right? So, and it won't take you long to guess on those. When Michael Peterson jumped up in this to grab onto Kathleen's body, first of all, it was dramatic, but Michael Peterson is a dramatic guy, right? This is just who he is. But I was also like, is he doing this to destroy evidence? Like, what a showmanship type thing. One thing this document does, I keep calling it a documentary, one thing this show does is it drops these little hints at things for different possibilities of what things could be throughout, right? And this is just episode 1. So right here, you already are seeing, like, okay, he's getting blood on him, he's messing the crime scene up. Remember, she's already been there before he called 911, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that went on that nobody will ever really know, except, unfortunately, Kathleen, she doesn't have a voice, and Michael Peterson, right? So there's already that going on, but this whole thing of jumping up and grabbing onto the body and this, that, and the other, I mean, I was just like, oh, whoa, this is major. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, then it flashes back a few months leading up to the death. When one of the girls is going to college, it shows a scene of Kathleen running up the stairs and almost falling. And again, I just said this show does a good job at kind of showing these different snippets of this and that and the other, and it makes you say, oh my God, did that happen? And in the scene, it shows Kathleen running up, maybe to tell one of the boys dinner's ready or something like that, and the staircase, which the staircase was essentially the staircase that, say, back in the day that the help would use, right? And it was like in the middle of the home. It wasn't like the grand staircase, and so it was like the normal staircase. And so she turns the corner to go up it real quick, and she kind of slips, and it just puts that thought in your head of, that's how it could have happened. That's how she could have fallen, right? So it's doing an excellent job just in episode 1 of allowing your brain to go to all these different things of, well, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this. But again, seeing it played out, it just sends chills down my spine. Okay, so let's keep going. Then it flashes back to an event. Todd calls Uncle Bill. Now, Uncle Bill is Michael Peterson's brother. Uncle Bill is a lawyer, but Uncle Bill is like an estate lawyer. He's not like a criminal defense person, right? Okay, so Uncle Bill tells him, so Todd calls Uncle Bill. This is current time. Kathleen's at the bottom of the staircase. Cops are all there. Todd tells him what's happening. Michael Peterson is on the computer in the office talking to himself. Now, at this point, the cops are like, y'all stand here, you can't go anywhere, yada, yada. Michael Peterson's on the computer. Now, this was a big thing that went on because remember, this whole computer situation is going to be drama, right? So he's on the computer kind of mumbling to himself, being weird. The house is a crime scene, right? And so this is the first red flag of, what? Huh? Now, this is where the search warrant is executed and all the beginning of the theory of foul play is taking place. So again, this is where we start to see in the very beginnings of how this was treated at the very start, and they're showing us in this. They're calling, Jim. I can't remember his last name right now. Let me see if it's in front of me. No, Jim, the state attorney Jim at home. It's Michael Peterson. Oh, Michael Peterson. Yeah, he had been writing these things. He was coming after Durham. All this kind of thing. He was wanting to be a politician. He got caught lying. This kind of a thing, right? People were out for him, and so this is all being thrown out there. Right, wrong, indifferent, whether people are out for him or not, you cannot deny anyone showing up on the scene and seeing Kathleen's body in the state that it was at the bottom of the stairs with the amount of blood is going to give them pause. And also his initial story of when things happen and the blood when it is dried, it does not add up, point blank, period, right? So there's just red flags, but of course this is going to take a little bit to add up. Now, another thing that's interesting is how Todd kind of has to take over for his dad, right? And be the spokesperson because his dad becomes like inconsolable at this point in time. So this is all being shown. The show does a very swift job of bringing all the storyline together very quickly. Let's go to the next. We see a scene of Mike calling Kathleen's sister Candace and asking for her husband, so his brother-in-law, Mike's brother-in-law, calling Candace's husband. Hold on, let me start over. And let me rephrase this. So when all this goes down, Mike has to go stay at a neighbor. His neighbor's name is Larry. We'll talk about him more later. So Mike is over at Larry's house. Mike is calling people to be like, this is what happened, right? This is the next day or whatever. Mike calls Candace. Candace is Kathleen's sister. He gets Candace on the phone. Hey, is so-and-so there, her husband? But this is already weird enough, right? And she's like, what's going on? He's like, and he's freaking out or whatever. And when he hangs the phone up, he's like, he says the F word. He's like, I couldn't do it. So then he had gotten the phone number from Candace for her husband, Mike's brother-in-law. And he calls him and tells her, and he says, I couldn't tell her, right? And so it kind of normalizes it a little bit, but it's still very weird, right? And it leads you to go one of two ways. And again, I felt like they did it in a good way because I was like, this is weird that he did that he can't tell Candace because to me it's a sign of guilt. But then the way it's played off is also like, well, maybe he just couldn't tell her, right? Again, I'm saying all this, playing both sides of the fence. I still feel the same way that I feel about this, right? My mind hasn't really changed. This show's probably not going to change that. But I'm open to it, right? But I'm looking at both angles of it. So I think it's doing a good job at playing both sides of the fence, leaving all avenues open. So there is that. That was definitely weird. Okay, then again, they're going through different flashbacks and time frames and all this kind of stuff. So then there's that. Now then, we see a scene of him rewatching his interview. Okay, remember how I said that Mike wanted to be a politician? So there's a scene of him in his office at his home. It's a different time. He's rewatching his interview that he did at home, and this is where he's being questioned about the fact that he lied about being like a wounded soldier or something like that, getting wounded in war. Not a cute look to ever do, right? This did not fare well for him. And so he's kind of like critiquing himself, and he gets a phone call, and it's from who we don't know at this time, but if you followed it, you know it's probably this, well, a male hooker. And he's like talking to him like, yeah, we're going to meet over here, baby. Yeah, you ready to, get that, what pounded? And I was like, well, my goodness, this just went from 0 to 100 very quickly. And I was like, well, to be quite honest, I didn't think that Mike was driving the ship in these situations, if you know what I'm trying to say. So I was like, oh, okay. But again, the whole dynamic with Mike is that he wrote this book, he made a lot of money off of it, and then he really didn't work. He didn't sell a book for a while, right? And so Kathleen was the breadwinner. She was working for Nortel. She was making all this money, but Nortel was boom, 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 laying people off, doing this. They were living above their means. They were living in this grand mansion in Durham, North Carolina. The upkeep on this, y'all, it's insane, right? A home like that, it's even today, no, you gotta have a lot of money to keep a home like this up. So it was not good. All these kids in the house going to college, doing this, so on and so forth. So to see Mike at home with this scene of critiquing himself, about the interview, talking to hookers on the phone, it just is icky, right? So there's that. And then it cuts to another scene, I believe this is next, of him and Kathleen talking about money. And I want to cut to it. I don't know. Okay, I don't know if I made a note about this later, and whether this is that scene or not, but she's like, maybe we should cut off their housekeeper, it sounded like, to save money or whatever. And you're like, he's talking about hiring a damn hooker. She's out here working, busting her butt. You know what I'm saying? And he's over here playing Mr. Ryder. Now, he had some stuff in the works that we will learn that was potentially coming through for a movie deal, this, that, and the other, but again, with what he was doing, he needed to be probably producing a best-selling novel like he had before on a more regular basis to be able to keep up the lifestyle that they were living. Okay, now the next scene that we'll cut to is that of the autopsy. And so I put here, we see the autopsy, there's a pine needle between the fingers, there's numerous lacerations, but no skull fracture. This is one of the, what I call the unsolved mysteries of this case. And we'll get more into it probably in other episodes as they go deeper into the owl theory, things of this nature of what happened to Kathleen. She has this hair in her hand, she has a pine needle in between here, they'll find an owl feather. The lacerations in the back of her head, no skull fractures, the blow poke, all this stuff, right? It's one of those cases where I personally do not think they will ever know what happened to her. Unfortunately, sadly, I think we can all surmise probably what happened, and I think at the end of the day, only her and Mike know. But nonetheless, they're showing that it's very sobering. There's a lot of stuff that, there's a lot of stuff wrong with her body, right? And again, it's just throwing these red flags up. They're like, what? They're trying to figure this out. Okay, so the next note. Then we go to another scene. We then see Uncle Bill, the lawyer, arrive. So we're back at the current time. And there's a scene of him and Mike and the boys. And so, yeah, they're at a table. It's they're by themselves. And the boys, Michael Peterson's sons. And Uncle Bill is like, look, it's just us in here. This isn't going to leave the room, but I have to ask. And immediately Michael Peterson is like, Jesus, no. He was going to ask, did you do it, right? Anyone would, okay? Because there is this level of, you would have to ask this question, right? Because even when Todd came in and he kept asking, Dad, what happened? What happened? What happened? It is a logical question. And seeing this played out of, well, I went in and she was at the bottom of the stairs. Anybody would ask, if you saw this, what the hell happened? Okay? It's just too bizarre. Anyways. So he's like, Jesus, no. So during this, we learned that they performed, They find a condom. We see this earlier when they're searching the house, that they found a condom in the bedroom, and of course Mike's like, we didn't use condoms. So they performed an R-test kit on Kathleen because the condom was found in the bedroom, but it came back negative. Now at the time, we will learn that this came from one of the boys and his girl or whatever, but they don't say that in this moment. So this is one of those like open-ended things to kind of leave you like, you know. But this gives Mike a chance in the show at least to be like, look, they're setting me up, they're setting me up, they're setting me up. So there's that. The next note, we then see a scene of Mike and his brother having lunch with David, the attorney, going over the initial story and questions. Okay, so, and I'm trying to see, David Randolph, I believe is his name, last name. I don't have it in front of me. He is a kind of, you know, high profile, major player attorney, and as they say in the show, out of Chapel Hill by way of New York. Again, we'll kind of talk about that later, but I might forget. One of the things with situations like this, in a case like this, and being from this area, is that I can pick up on some of the nuances because I'm from here. And so like when I watched this initial documentary, I was like, oh yeah, this guy probably had some issues, right? You know, slick, high paid, fancy attorney from New York. This isn't going to go well here. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And I think that was used. Definite bias against Michael Peterson, right? Definite bias. Even though I think that his attorney, David, is amazing. And actually, side note, at CrimeCon, he was there. And so, as well as David Lee, or Henry Lee, the blood splatter guy for Michael Peterson. Anyways, so there's a scene there of the meeting, and that this kind of like very, you know, to the point. It's going to cost $500,000. Michael Peterson, of course, gasping. Did Kathleen have life insurance? Yes. You know, staying out of prison costs a lot of money, basically. And this is true, right? This is what this will come down to. Is basically you're going to have to go bankrupt to stay out of prison. And as we know, it didn't really work. But eventually it did. Anyways, let's keep going. Then we see a scene of the girls coming back from home, as well as Candace and Kathleen's sisters. So the girls have gone to college. This is all going on. Very soon thereafter, they have to come back. I mean, you know, this has happened. So everyone's coming into town. They all know, right? And they come back in. They're in the scene where they're in the living room. And Kathleen's sisters, Candace, I can't remember her other sister's name, they basically are just like, we want to know what's going on. We feel like we're being left out in the dark. And Uncle Bill, Mike's brother, is like, it's probably best not to do this right now. You know, and they're like, we want to know, like, what's going on? What is up with the police? What's up? Like, what is up? So he goes over the story. He recounts the story about, you know, we were celebrating, I was getting this movie deal, you know, things were looking up, you know, and and we were having drinks by the pool, and then she had to go back in, and then he came back in, and she was, you know, at the bottom of the stairs. And so one thing in this scene that I felt like it did is it showed us, it almost felt like, to me, like this, like Mike was like, okay, my back's against the wall, I'm gonna have to go, here's the story. You know, that kind of a thing, right? Like, this is the story. Here's what happened. You know, this is what I'm going with. And there's that. So, next. This one's a major one, y'all. Major. We're shown a scene from 2001 where she is at a party at their home and is pretty tipsy and jumps into the pool and hurts her neck. Okay, so this one is major. So they're having like some kind of party at their house, and she's drinking champagne, and it shows her gulp one and pour another one, and then she's walking around, and her behavior is such that it's almost like one of those like, she's gonna embarrass herself, maybe. Like, she's definitely vibing, right? And then she just decides, I'm gonna jump in the pool. And she jumps in and apparently like hurts her neck in there. And so I'm like, oh my God, like this is going to open the door for so many different things to come, right? With the autopsy and all this kind of stuff, but also this whole thing, because remember, you know, the whole story from like Todd and Mike is she was drunk, she was this and that, and then from her side is, look, she wasn't that drunk, right? I mean, she wasn't that inebriated. So again, the show is doing this good job of kind of creating this murky water of showing all different possibilities of different things. Am I saying they portray her as a drunk? Absolutely not. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this scene, I was like, is this real? Does she really do this? I mean, this is kind of wild and crazy, right? So anyways, there's that. Let's keep going. This one. Okay. We are shown a scene where before the wake, Michael Peterson can barely get dressed. Then the cops show up for another search warrant, and he gets up and starts getting dressed and yells at them. So he's like in his bedroom, and he's like, I can't. People are going to be looking at me. And his brother's in there, Uncle Bill. We're just going to call him Uncle Bill. You know, and he's like, look, you got to go in there. You got to show a face and da-da-da, you know, all that. And so then someone comes in and like, the cops are here for another search warrant. And so then Uncle Bill goes out and Michael Peterson, then he starts... He's getting dressed when the cop comes in. He's like, I'm trying to get dressed for my wife's wake. Can't you leave me alone? And it's showing, again, to me, the showmanship, the dramatics, the let me put a show on. And I just think that that's who Mike Peterson is, right? I personally think he's a narcissist. So I just think that that's who he is and that's what he does. And this is his moment up. Here we go. It's showtime, Johnny. We are shown a scene of them coming back to the Petersons' home after the wake. Okay. And Mike yells for his brother and only for the brother to come to the office, his office. And it's been ransacked from the search warrant. The cops took his computer and it seems that they printed out one of his like gay pics and left it in Peterson's as a sign. So the brother comes in and he's like, Bill, only Bill, come in here. And again, these are the scenes that I'm like, did this go down this way? And it's so interesting. And so when Bill goes in there, I mean, it looks ransacked. And he's like, oh, look at the mess he left it in, and there's like a gay porn picture or whatever. They don't show it in this one. And this, of course, is, I get the vibe that this is the first that his brother has seen this, and he's like, is there stuff like this? And of course, this is awkward, you know, and Peterson's like, I saved pictures, and his brother's probably like, well, yeah, I can see that, girl. You know, how many of these you got on here? You know what I mean? Like, is this tawdry? Is this ish? Get okay. Probably needed to tell us about this. So, and he's like, it's a sign, like they're leaving it for me or whatever. And I agree, right? It's almost like, ooh, yeah, this is where they're going to play hardball. And so I will agree with Michael Peterson on this, where I'm like, oh yeah, dude, like they were out to get you, but you kind of, he kicked the hornet's nest way before this happened. And then this happened and it was like, oh yeah, like, I mean, right, wrong, or indifferent, they had him by the you-know-what. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Okay, so then we're shown after this, Peterson calling to hire David, the attorney. And we're shown then the state. So this is where we get to start seeing Parker Posey. And they're gathering up stuff for the grand jury. So this is where we get to meet Jim and Frida. That's the character's name. The real people, were the state people. Not the actors, so it's what I'm trying to say. So they're gathering their stuff up to do this. We're seeing these scenes. Then we see David calling him and he's like, yep, you know what, you're going to be indicted. You're going to have to turn yourself in. You know, we're going to need you to speak. And this is where one of the things that the documentary did is it kind of gave you insight into what goes on, the theatrics behind these high profile cases. And he's like, look, you're going to need to speak. You're going to need your family around you. We're going to really need like the biological family to speak. You know, Caitlin, you know, we're going to need you to bring a Bible. And, you know, what's his name? Michael's like, I don't want to bring that. And he's like, this is about optics at this point. And unfortunately, this is true, right? Sadly, this is just how these things work, right? We see this play out not only in the justice system, but just life itself, right? I mean, it is what it is. So, there's that. Tells him to bring money for the commissary money, and now in real life we'll know that he goes and does this. And another thing, let me interrupt myself, they do an excellent job in this of mimicking the actual real footage of this. I mean, they are accurate in this. I'm talking accurate. I'll be honest. Well, we'll get to this. I'm almost done with my notes, and then I'll give my overall review of it. Okay, so this is major. Then we are shown a scene of Kathleen's sisters being shown the autopsy photos by Jim and Frida. They are shocked, and they also show them the gay photos. And like, we knew it. Now, here's one thing that I was like, oh my God. So if you remember, if you've watched this, there is a gay male escort that is brought into the scenario that will testify in the stand. And so they're showing these photos and they're like, you know, and Frida's like, well, look, you know, we've gotten to know your sister. She's a very nice Southern lady. And I don't think she would allow this filth in this marriage. Frida, the real woman Frida, was just very interesting to watch, right? Even though I do feel like she exploited a lot of this stuff to the advantage of their side, even though they had people lying on the stand, right? So there's that. What was interesting and shocking was to learn once they started showing the sisters the autopsy photos, because anyone would see these autopsy photos and you're like, and again, the owl theory hasn't been, none of this stuff has been brought up at this point. You're seeing the autopsy photos and all of the injuries on her body and you're like, what? Just the head injuries alone. And imagine, even if it was 100%, we could go back in time with the hidden camera and see that she legitimately fell down the stairs. Nobody wants to see their loved one in that state, the head shaved. It's horrible, right? Horrible. Then they're pulling a photo out and being like, and even at that point, they're like, why would he want to do this? Like, we don't, And they're like, well, we think we found these on the computer. They show the full nudes of the hooker. They showed his wiener, and he was excited. I was like, oh my God, it is HBO. So I was like, oh my God. And that's when one of the sisters was like, I knew it. There was always something. And so that brings me to this. Okay, so when you're watching the original documentary, which the documentary was very slanted, The Staircase, the original one, towards Michael Peterson, and basically that he was wrongfully convicted because he was gay and that kind of thing or whatever, or, whatever, bi in the closet, that was, which I do think that was used against him in this, right? That was like a kind of slanted towards him. I think that they used the whole dynamic of his sexuality against him is what I'm getting at. So when they start showing this to him, like, oh, that's what it is, we always knew it. I was like, yeah, when you're watching this, and even in, stuff recently or whatever, it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, you just can't put your finger on it with Michael Peterson, but there's just something there. Something's off, right? The showmanship, and maybe, and again, I'm not a clinical psychologist or I'm a clinical sofa guy, but I just feel like he's a complete narcissist, right? And so that's why I'm just like, yeah, I mean, all these antics that he does, this dramatics, all this stuff, right? So there's that. Now, I'm going to say this. These are the notes that I made for this episode. So I want to say these little things overall. So obviously you need to watch the whole damn thing. I'm going to do it episode by episode and talk about it because each one is such a little nuance about the show and about the case and whatnot. So here's my thing with it. So when I watched the documentary and I watched all that, I feel like at the end of the day, that Michael Peterson had something to do with Kathleen's death, right? I don't feel like they'll ever be able to prove it, especially now, right? Because Dwayne Deaver I feel like Dwayne Deaver should be in jail for what he did, to be quite honest. I think it's absolutely insane what he did. I think it's why we need to make sure that everyone has a fair trial and fair representation, because unfortunately situations happen like this, right? Now, I am open to any and all evidence, and if this documentary makes me say, which it very well could, but I just, I don't think the owl did it. I don't think any of that, but we'll see how I feel at the end of this. I just, I don't know. We'll see. So, that being said, I like the fact that this show is doing a good job. It's showing all different angles. And one thing I always try and do here at the sofa and for myself and whatnot is just like I said, I feel like Michael Peterson has something to do with it. Does that mean I feel like he got a fair trial? No, I don't think he got a fair trial, right, at all. I don't think I just don't think he did, and I think it needed to be overturned because of what they did on the stand, right? I think that was highly, highly bad what Dwayne Deaver did. And I mean, Dwayne Deaver did really, really bad things to other cases too. This wasn't just Michael Peterson, and that's why I'm like, he should be in jail, right? He should be in jail, because honestly, there's innocent people that went to prison because of Dwayne Deaver, and then there's people with blood on their hands that are on the streets because of Dwayne Deaver. So you do the math on that. So that being said, I'm going to go through each episode and make notes and talk about it because I just think this is such a well done documentary. I love that HBO has done this. I'm so tired of Netflix's formula. Even though, you know me, I watch a lot of their stuff, but I just feel like it's a formula. It's old. It's just, it is what it is, right? And I feel like HBO is just, it's so on point with this. And they have done so many little nuanced things to just make it very, just the very high caliber, right? So I'm very impressed with this. I am completely here for Parker Posey as Frida. Love Parker Posey. Please God, tell me y'all have seen what is this show? Best in Show. If you have not, rush out and watch it. So anyways, dying to know what y'all think. Let me know in the comment section. Drop it down there like it's hot. And that's it. Until we meet next time, I'm gonna go watch episode 2 tonight and then come on here and make another video. Anyways, that's it. What we'll do is once we get caught up with them, we'll do a live chat and talk about them. And that's it. I appreciate everyone being here, and we will talk around the damn sofa the next time we meet up. Whoosh, I'll see you soon.